Every one of us in our own ways, through our own trials, is making our way through a season. And in its great wins and hard moments and sudden losses, there's an answer we all seek to know and all want to find.
Touchdown, Jalen Hurts. Oklahoma still alive.
What's our place? How do we measure? Where do we stand? Much goes into that accounting. And now starts the reckoning. The strength of a schedule, the power of a conference, the quality of a victory, the proof of our results. We work, we wait to earn and learn the answer. Where do we rank? Are we in?
2, 1. Nice and slow, go.
Here we are. It is Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-Its. We're coming at you live, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, the ESPN app, everywhere that you could possibly imagine. I'm Mike Golic, hanging out with Mike Golic Jr., Christine Williamson. Oh, we added some...
Who did you say you were?
So you said you were Mike Golic.
So you were Mike Golic.
You're Jason Fitz.
That's fair.
I'm Mike Golic Jr.
That's fair. You know what?
There's three Mike
He
Golics
is
on the
my
couch
dad,
right
Mike
now.
Golic Sr.
How much you want to be part of this family?
Well, you know what? See, here's the problem. I got this much food in front of me. I just don't stand a chance. It's been a day. Here we go.
Try it again.
Rankings Reaction presented by Cheez-It. There is Cheez-Its here, as you know, every single week. Trust us, though. There's Cheez-Its in the mac and cheese. Also, we're going to have some food. We're going to react.
fancy.
Now we'll try this again. I'm Jason Fitz. He's Mike Golic Jr. He's Mike Golic. Christine Williamson hanging out next to me. Everybody, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So this is Thanksgiving week, and so home cooked feast here. Nicole, who was here before, who left, we found out someone that works with us was a former food blogger, made us this scratch. Caroline was helping, made from scratch this Thanksgiving feast, which includes Cheez-It crumble on the mac and cheese. Truly a blessing.
We slaved over it in the kitchen all day.
Crushed it.
I'm very impressed with Nicole, so shout out to Nicole.
Yes,
She
big
did,
up.
she did a fan.
She's at work
It's
today.
so good.
Yeah, incredible job from scratch. Really a great
Master.
job by her.
Yep.
Master.
Well, here's what I know. We're going to eat a lot of food over the course of the next hour. We're also, if you're new, trying to figure out what we do here. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to react to everything that the College Football Playoff Committee gave you. We're going to give you our thoughts on what we've gotten from the committee over the course of the night. We're going to eat a bunch of Cheez-Its. We're going to eat some Thanksgiving food. It's going to be a good time. So let's start with what the committee showed us at the top. The top of the rankings as we get here, not a lot of, well, let's say there were some surprises to some. We do have a change at number 1 at the top of the rankings.
Yeah.
Ohio State comes in at number 1, but I guess we're going to go 6 to 1. I'm off to just an incredible start. Utah at 6, Alabama at 5, Georgia at 4. I'll learn how to be a professional by 3, which at 3 we're going to get Clemson as expected. At number 2, we're going to go ahead and get LSU. We have a new number 1 team with Ohio State. That's okay with me, guys. And look, I know we went back and forth on what this was going to mean, but ultimately, I can see the argument for either side of it. LSU has the better record resume, in my opinion, but Ohio State looks like a better football team. So I don't know how you value that. I figured we might see a shift at this. I'm a little surprised. If I was on the committee, I wouldn't have changed what I saw last week based on this week. But, Junior, they've made the decision that at least for right now, Ohio State goes to number 1.
What we've seen all year is that the margin between number 1 and 2, and really 3 for a while when Alabama was still kind of in the mix with everybody, that margin up top was razor thin, even in the AP voting. So it's no surprise that a ranked win this last week for Ohio State would be what they need to vault above LSU for now, despite we know the juggernaut schedule that LSU's been through at this point, Christine.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because if you look at the college football playoff in the past, they haven't done this with the 1, 2, and 3 team.
No.
If they're losing games or if they're winning games, they haven't changed what they put in the first weeks. So I think it's really interesting to see them actually take into consideration wins that these teams are having and actually deciding, okay, this win means more than this win.
It's cool now, but we all know where it's going to go. If the teams went out, and I think the important thing to remember here is we keep talking about 3 teams, Ohio State, LSU, Clemson, as those 3 teams, and then who's going to slot in at number 4. So the key here is going to be in that last rankings, in all honesty, who's number 2, because they're going to take on Clemson. Clemson isn't getting any higher than 3. If everything holds, if Ohio State wins out and LSU wins out, number 2 is going to play 3, and that'll be Clemson. So that's one of the reasons we always say, oh, it doesn't matter. Well, it'll matter then. LSU is going to go back to number one if they beat Georgia in the SEC championship game. Because you look at Ohio State, they're going to play, 13 Michigan, and then Minnesota, if everybody wins, Minnesota won't move up any more than 8. So if Minnesota wins, now Wisconsin could beat Minnesota, but if Minnesota wins, so Ohio State would beat 13 Michigan, 8 Minnesota, but then LSU would beat 4 Georgia. LSU jumps back to number 1. Ohio State would be 2. They take on Clemson in the first round, and LSU will take on whoever number 4 is, which is going to be the fun thing to talk about.
But here's what blows my mind a little bit about that. What I want from a committee is a process where they're looking at it every week and they're saying, okay, this is what I see and this is what makes sense. Did we really see anything last week that changed your mind on what you thought going into last week about the top 2 teams in the country? Like, if you already thought Ohio State was number 2 and LSU was number 1, does a win over a thumping of Penn State?
Yeah, it
really
does, because it's a ranked team. You have to give them the credit for the week they're playing, and they're complete. They look complete. Now Ohio State, with the fumbles, I think that kept Penn State in the game a little more than they should have been. But I do think you have to give them their due. I have no problem with this. I think it's a ranked team, and you went in and you beat a ranked team, so I think you reward them for that, just like I think in the last ranking, LSU will be rewarded for beating Georgia.
Well, but I'm not sure. The committee is still telling you that as we look at that list, at number 5, by the way, is Alabama. Still right outside.
Lurking.
But to me, is a win over Penn State for Ohio State suddenly this great awakening that overvalues LSU beating Alabama just a week ago? Like, it just feels really in the moment. Like, we talked a lot on Golic and Wingo this morning about sort of the prisoner of the moment with quarterbacks and how we analyze quarterback
But
play.
don't we want in the moment? I mean, isn't that what we want? I mean, they're playing games every week, and then the rankings come out. So isn't that part of it supposed to be the moment? Instead of overall?
I think part of it for me is like nice that we're thinking of, Christine, to your point, that we're thinking of 1 and 2 as much as we have in all this. Like, generally, the part of the ranking that we've been interested in is where we're still, like, when we get to 7 through 10 in this, there are a lot of interesting results that to me are the biggest impact of the night. But the fact that we are reminded that the committee looks at this every week and is fighting tooth and nail just to figure out who 1 is in all of this, and that we don't have the consensus, speaks to a lot of what people have been complaining about in college football for the last few years, which is it's felt a little too sure and certain at times.
Yeah, I honestly, and we can get to this when we get to 3, 4, 5, 6, but I don't think the committee actually knows what they're doing this season. If I'm being completely honest. I truly don't. I'm just like, especially after last week with Oregon getting that loss, I don't think they understand what's going on in college football this season.
Okay, so let's get to that next group, because as much as we're talking about number 1, there is still this moment where Georgia, who, by the way, I think what we're all saying here is there are top 3 teams in college football, right? Outside of those top 3 teams, there is such a line. Mm-hmm. I mean, such a line of difference between the next group of 3. But Georgia, Alabama, and now Utah moves up to 6 after Oregon gets upset by Herm Edwards and Arizona State. You start to look at that. Now, from there, Oklahoma 7, Minnesota 8, Baylor 9, Penn State 10. A week ago, we were ready to say the Big 12 is dead. Now Oklahoma's sitting here saying, hold my beer. We still have a shot to play in this. I'm having a hard time figuring out what it all means.
The committee, okay, so 2 things. A, I don't think the committee actually, we talked about this week 1, right? The Pac-12 was above the Big 12 week 1 with Oregon and Utah, above Oklahoma and an undefeated Baylor. So then you look at the rankings every single week. 6 teams out of the Big 12 have been in the college football playoff ranking, right? Until last week, we only saw one other Pac-12 team other than Utah in Oregon. So it's like, does the committee actually think that the Big 12 isn't good? They're putting 60% of the Big 12.
Yeah, you're saying the depth of the Big 12 is showing up there. So yeah, they obviously think that those teams are valuable. So why then is the Pac-12 above Oklahoma and Baylor if you do think that this conference is so strong? I mean, I think that's the reminder of what college football has always been, like conference strength, and this thing that we argue about all the time is really just, and Greg McElroy, who we saw on the college football ranking show tonight, and who may or may not be stopping by later tonight. I can't confirm or deny the presence of another guest. But one time
I tweeted he's going to be here, so if he's not.
He better. I mean, let's put it that way. I'm going to put the pressure on him now. But me and him had this conversation. Conference strength and the supremacy we talk about is usually just what are your top 2, maybe 3 teams really capable of in this. And it was the committee saying that the top 2 teams in the Pac-12, they thought, especially coming into this year and certainly towards the middle of the season, were stronger. Now when we look at it, like how quick that drop-off was for Oregon, losing to Arizona State has put them in a perilous spot and brought the Big 12 back from the dead.
Well, and I think also week 1 wasn't the argument that Oregon had a win or a loss against a really good Auburn
Quality
team.
loss.
But then if you look at Texas, they had a quality loss against LSU, and they're number 6 in the Big 12. So if you're talking about the top of the conference, if Texas is number 6 in the Big 12, then what does that mean for Oklahoma if LSU has a quality loss against an LSU team that's undefeated and they're number 1 in the country?
They do. Listen, Texas has made their bed with the rest of their season and the things that have gone
Well,
on.
remember, Texas is back.
Still.
We're back.
For now. I mean, it is, and we laugh about that, but it's funny. When we were at game day this year in Texas and we were doing the whole "Is Texas back?" It was a real conversation early in the season, and now we're like, no, we're back to having the same conversation about Texas.
We're back to Tom Herman having to headbutt kids to try and get anybody excited about UT football right
what
now.
is that? We need to knock that out.
Wait, we got 2 former players on the couch. Like, when the coach comes out and just starts headbutting people, does that get you excited? Do you get pumped up for that?
Right in that moment, you get a little bit jacked up, but when the ball's kicked off, it meant nothing.
Well, you know what it is? It's like, I'm excited about you being the headbutt guy if I'm excited about you, period. Like, I don't know if Tom Herman's that dude or not around there, but if he wasn't the headbutt guy before, him trying to be the headbutt guy in the moment is going to elicit eye rolls, not some sort of.
Then a lot of players are going to say, okay, that's a try-hard move, and they're not going to buy into it. Maybe the coach now have a cut on his head.
You got to say that for the strength coaches, too. Those are the guys.
Those are the guys that need to do that. Those are the guys that are bleeding you're cool with.
So you can't go from being the hug guy to the headbutt guy. I'm asking.
No. You're a hug guy. If you ever headbutt somebody, you'll knock yourself out.
Yeah.
And it will have no effect.
I would definitely die.
So, I mean, let's look at this thing and say the 4 is done if Georgia beats LSU, right? Then they're both going to be in, correct?
Right, yeah.
Georgia, so that's over. But we're saying if everything holds, then now we're talking Alabama, Utah, and OU. Do you guys legitimately think OU is back in this thing? If OU beats now a number 9 Baylor and Utah beats now a 14 Oregon, do we think if Alabama truly is going to be out of this thing that Oklahoma jumps Utah?
Well, I think what you just said there is really important about how much the committee valued that Oregon loss.
Yeah,
Oregon goes to 14. I'll throw a little bit of a wrench at our guys back in the studio. I don't know if we can pull the 10 through 15 up here, but there was a lot of conversation about where Oregon was going to go after they lose to Arizona State. Man. And it was an absolute thumping to Oregon from the committee as the committee drops Oregon all the way to number 14. And guys, I think that's substantial. I mean, we've been talking for the last couple of weeks about what the committee's been saying about Baylor by devaluing Baylor because they're not moving up high enough to get a quality win. Well, you lose, and suddenly, and we've got it up for you now, Auburn 15, Oregon 14, Michigan 13, Wisconsin 12, Florida, by the way, nobody even wants to talk about Florida, sitting at number 11. Good for them. But Oregon dropping all the way to 14. I keep using the expression, how much runway do you have left? I don't think it leaves enough runway for the Pac-12 to get what they would need. Well,
and I guess that's the difficulty in this now is you look at what they've got left. Like, who is Oregon playing this week? I'm blanking on it right now. Because I know you look at this week coming up, who everyone's going to get before these conference championship games. Oklahoma is going to play a still ranked Oklahoma State team when we get to the 20s. I think
21.
Oklahoma State's ranked 21. So they can get a ranked win there and then a top 10 win against Baylor should Baylor hold serve in all of this. You're going to get in the Big Ten, you've got Minnesota with a game where College Game Day is going to be this weekend. Minnesota with a game against Iowa this weekend, so that's big time. And then you're going to have Ohio State playing Michigan. So all of these teams that we're talking about in this have a chance to pick up a ranked win in all this. Where is the Pac-12? Do we see who Oregon and Utah are playing right now?
Oregon's playing Oregon State.
Utah, I think, is playing Colorado. So it should be 2 wins for those guys.
2 wins, but 2 unranked wins.
I think Oregon screwed it up for Utah now.
Yeah?
I mean, for themselves, obviously, by losing. But I think they screwed it up.
The entire Pac-12 takes it.
Now Oklahoma can't do another what they did when they beat Baylor last time. They need to beat them this time and not spot them a bunch and then make this miraculous comeback.
Well, I think that's the crazy part is we don't know who either of those teams are going to be. Like, we saw 2 teams play their absolute best and absolute worst in the same football game. And so who are we supposed to believe?
and for now, so we're supposed to be in the situation of you're not supposed to show out anymore. It's all about what you can put on somebody, right?
Well, and
this is what we need to do right now.
That's Alabama's week.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's all you can hope for.
And let's also acknowledge, because Mike, you said earlier, Georgia beats LSU, they're in.
Yes.
There is one other caveat to that. Minnesota has the opportunity to beat Iowa and then they would go to the Big Ten championship game where, if they could do the impossible, I think Minnesota, like if we're talking about the impossible, because frankly, LSU, I think, is just going to clobber Georgia. I don't think Georgia can score enough points to even belong on the field.
Man, I don't know. LSU's defense would like to remind you that it exists and it is willing to give up some yards to an ugly Georgia offense.
Even LSU's defense isn't bad enough to make Jake Fromm look pretty this year. For whatever reason, it's off the rails.
I was going to say, DeAndre Swift, who was still maybe shouting at Jake Fromm in the backfield and making me very uncomfortable in that last game, is probably still ready and willing to take what that LSU defense is willing to give it, which is damn near everything.
But if we're gonna make a case that Georgia can beat LSU, the Big Ten championship game would be Minnesota, Ohio State. Like Minnesota, in my mind.
Do any of you think if Minnesota beats Ohio State, they're not in?
Right, they would go in over Georgia.
I think they would absolutely be in
they
over
would,
Ohio
totally
State.
Yeah.
I mean, so Minnesota,
does Minnesota trigger what we think the Georgia LSU situation
would
is?
be two
if
Big
Minnesota
Tens?
beats Ohio State, we get 2 Big Tens.
2 Big Tens?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the SEC champ. See, like,
How about that? What if Georgia beats LSU and Minnesota beats Ohio State?
yeah, does Clemson get bounced then?
Oh,
before
there's no
it's-
shot Clemson gets bounced if they're undefeated.
Well, so then the odd, like
Then
the odd,
who's the odd team out?
like so the
What a fun scenario
I
that
think
is.
Georgia could beat LSU in the SEC championship
Right.
game,
Yes.
and LSU would still, in that situation, go to the
Depending on
college
how they
football
lose.
playoff. if they
So
lost
who
a
would
close
be
game.
out? We're saying if Minnesota beats Ohio State, Georgia beats LSU.
Georgia's out.
Georgia's out.
Wait,
Georgia's
Georgia
out.
beating LSU in the SEC champ
dude,
and they're
but
out?
I think they would knock out Minnesota before they'd knock out Georgia.
Even
Committee's already
Minnesota
showed it.
beating Ohio State.
I'm
boy,
saying,
oh,
well, you
boy.
got to leave. They're not going to keep out undefeated conference.
No, they're not. I
Clemson's
completely agree.
But the
Clemson's
reason I say Georgia is because the committee's already told you that head-to-head doesn't matter as much as common opponent. I mean, we just went through that with Penn State and
Oh my
Minnesota.
God.
I want
So
that scenario.
I'm just saying that in a
Who's
head-to-head
in?
world,
Who's in that scenario?
I would say,
want
okay,
that
so
scenario now.
I'm so pro Big 12 right now, just because I feel like the committee completely got it wrong week 1. If Oklahoma was number 7, I think it was, where Oregon was week 1, I feel like it wouldn't be an argument. I feel like they got it wrong. So I think that Oklahoma should be in the college football playoff. So I'm just going to throw them
But in
out.
the scenario we laid out,
Okay.
they're not going to be. If Minnesota beats
Minnesota beats Ohio State, okay,
and
then
Georgia beats LSU.
see,
In the two
I think
conference championship
LSU.
games.
Well, it depends on how it looks.
Yeah.
let's say
LSU,
close
Georgia.
games. Close games.
LSU, Georgia. I think Ohio State.
You think? I was going to say. Do you
Oh wait,
think,
Ohio State loses to Minnesota.
loses to
Ohio
Minnesota.
State's out. Ohio State's out.
You think
they
Ohio
would
State
kick
would be
Ohio
out?
Yes.
State out after this whole year?
Man, would that be?
See,
that is
the
wild.
thing for me is like the worst loss, if you're talking about all of these, the worst loss out of all it would belong to Georgia losing to South Carolina.
Yeah.
It's the,
Oh, that's
it's the,
true, that's true, that's true,
It's
that's true.
the,
There's- yeah, they have
the
this
loss that we can't turn around and justify. When you have the unjustifiable loss in a group of ties here, because you'd be talking about LSU saying, well, our only loss is to the number 4 team in
Yeah.
all the
Yeah,
land.
Minnesota's loss is to 17 Iowa.
Right. And in this situation, Ohio State's only loss would be to Minnesota, who's ranked.
who's
So
8.
by
Yeah,
far,
and
the
Minnesota's
worst
8,
of the
so
losses
they
would be
in it.
Georgia.
Oh,
So
I want that scenario.
Georgia wins the SEC over LSU.
and
Just
stays
straight
on.
chaos.
Doesn't make it in?
Just straight
Oh
chaos.
man.
Oh, you think Georgia
Wow.
fans are mad about the
Oh,
life
they're
of the
hate
Georgia
you
fan?
now because you really like put them out. You just didn't say they're going to be out. You just screamed.
Well, I mean, he's doing it in honor of Harry Douglas, who's not with us tonight, who has been
Oh,
about
yeah,
as
he's
out on
been-
Georgia as any human
yeah,
being.
Oh, so you think Harry would be the same? He would say
Oh, yeah,
Georgia
Georgia
was
was
out.
out.
Oh, really?
You know,
Very scary,
I
yeah.
spent so much of the early part of the season telling everybody, look, in my mind, top to bottom, when you look at the talent on the field, Georgia can play with anybody, and they belong in the same conversation
That's true.
as the Alabamas and the Ohio States. And all they've done all year is prove that that's just not correct. Like,
Yeah.
they have done their best
agree.
job of saying it doesn't matter how talented we are and how many how many 4-star recruits, 5-star restaurants, 4-star recruits eating all this food, how many great recruits we have, it doesn't matter. We just can't get it done. And at some point, you have to look around and say, hey, as much as it doesn't make sense to my mind, this offense is not a fluke for Georgia. The offense stinks.
Well, and I can't decide if it is the playing and certainly we know we well documented the turnover at receiver and these things, but Jake Fromm's the guy that has chased 5 stars out of there left and right. And I can't decide if it is the coaching that, they say you fall to your training, you don't rise to the occasion. I can't tell if it's the coaching staff just placed so little responsibility in Jake Fromm's hands through the course of the year that now if they ask him to start passing, he's going to be like, listen, dude, we haven't been doing this. Or if it's just he truly can't get it done in that way. Because we've seen plenty of clutch Jake Fromm in the past, a guy who's been capable, not necessarily in the volume of plays that he makes. He's never averaged 200 yards a game for a season passing, but he's been a guy that you can count on to deliver on throws when it matters, and it seems like that's even been lacking this year. So,
Well, and that's the unexplainable part. And I have a hard time because as we went into the season, there were people that were trying to carve out a narrative around Jake Fromm as being a high first-round draft pick caliber quarterback.
Yep.
And now what we're seeing is a quarterback that isn't reading what's in front of him correctly and isn't throwing the ball accurately. And when you have that combination out of nowhere, I can't make it make sense.
Well, you got young receivers and transfers. Like Cager, you could argue, is one of their more consistent guys. We know is the transfer from Miami, so he's been there for a year right now. Pickens and the other guys that we're talking about aren't the mainstays. It was wholesale turnover. It was a hockey line change at receiver. This late in the season, none of that really matters. But when you've made your living on the ground the way that they have, and that hasn't been a reliable part of your offense, it's like Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl. All of a sudden, now you want to run it. It's like, nah, man, that's not how we have lived. And so Jeff Saturday and company are going to look at you sideways, and rightfully so.
So our top 10 again: 10 Penn State, 9 Baylor, 8 Minnesota, 7 Oklahoma, 6 Utah, 5 Alabama, 4 Georgia, 3 Clemson, 2 LSU, 1 Ohio State. Christine, do we I know you're looking up a bunch.
Let's talk about some things that are going on social. First, I do want to say that Gojo, your mom has said thank you for the shoe shout out.
Oh yeah, like I said, the shoe message this week. My mom's birthday today.
Happy birthday, Mom. Happy birthday, Mom.
Mom's 35 years old today, so.
Yeah.
35, wow.
Yeah. I was surprised she wasn't here. Like, I thought there was going to be.
I'm surprised you made me come here when it's her birthday.
That's why we were supposed to have a party.
You're
right
welcome,
here.
Mom.
You know what I'm saying?
We got him out of the house for the night.
What is that?
I mean,
seriously.
Yeah, enjoy
Man
the
wants
peace.
to be with his wife on her birthday. You know what I'm saying?
Enjoy the peace and quiet.
Wow.
I mean, she's kind of getting her best birthday ever.
Absolutely.
She got a shout out. She got a shoe shout out. That's amazing.
Shout out. I like that.
I know we've been talking about different scenarios, but just like let's make it very simple. Shan Trotter on Facebook says, if UGA beats LSU, who would be the 4th team? LSU, Bama, Utah, Oregon, or Oklahoma?
I mean, if Georgia beats LSU in a close game, they're both getting in.
They're both getting in. Yeah, right. And
Okay.
Clemson's getting in. So who's the 4th team? That's what they're asking.
Who's the 4th? Yeah, who's the 4th team? So
Alabama, Utah, Oklahoma. I mean, those are the choices. And Alabama will be sitting and watching.
At this point, unless Alabama throttles
So I was going to say,
Yeah.
it's probably
Even
going to
if
be
they
results,
do,
right?
Is that enough?
But that's interesting because the committee has said before that like they take into consideration whether the star player is not on the team anymore. But
Yeah.
they didn't even really do that with Alabama. Obviously, that they haven't taken that into consideration. But I feel like even if they do that, like you were about to say, is that enough to have Alabama at number 5 or number 4?
I'm telling you, like, I keep nicknaming this committee the Just Cuz committee. Like, whenever you've been in a bar and you're having an argument and you've got that guy that's just constantly twisting the argument because they don't want to be wrong, and finally they're just like, you know what? Because I say
That's
so.
what I want. I want it like that.
One week it's like, no, you know what? Head-to-head matters. The next week, strength of schedule matters. Now it's like, oh, we're going to worry about common opponents. And then it's, the eye test. Like, you just can't put it down.
If we're going to put them in a box, the committee, Auburn is in the teens. Oregon is in the teens. Baylor's not. Baylor's at 9. So I think Oklahoma actually has put themselves in a really good position to get a good win there and be that 4th team.
And I keep wondering just how much it's going to be worth. And maybe I'm overthinking this, but we all know, and Dad, you played 9 years in the NFL. You understand playing a division opponent, playing someone twice a year is a difficult task.
Yeah, that's hard.
The idea of Oklahoma beating if the committee values them as a top 10 Baylor team twice in a matter of about a month or something like
There's
that.
something to that.
And especially if the second time around they can go out there and be the team that showed up in the second half for the entire game, then all of a sudden do you say, all right, there's a certain human element of what they just had to do is a little more difficult just because of that familiarity there. How do they reward that?
I agree. I do think Oklahoma could have the inside track to this. Again, because Alabama's Alabama, unless they just throttle Auburn. I think a lot's going to have to do with the outcomes of these games, but I do think of those 3 teams, Oklahoma, Utah, and Alabama, the way the committee set it up, Oklahoma had to your point of the Big 12, you think should be getting more respect than they are. I think Oklahoma could have that inside track.
That just feels stunning and I think you're right. Everything you're saying makes total sense. It just feels stunning because when Baylor and Oklahoma were both playing incredibly well, the committee didn't seem to respect it.
They didn't.
It's almost
was
like
weird,
it's
though.
almost like you know what? Now they've got no choice. Now that Oregon went out and blew it, it's like, all right, well, we got to find somebody.
Oregon blew it for themselves and the Pac-12.
The whole entire Pac-12.
Yep.
Last week, they tried to put USC in the top 25 to be like, hey, look, the Pac-12 is good.
Right.
We have a USC team in there. Really, but the Big 12 had been holding it down in the top 25 week after week. There's six out of the 10 teams have been in the college football playoff ranking.
And I mean, we can't, listen, Oregon could make this very easy on all of us. Like, Oregon versus Utah is going to be an interesting matchup. Obviously, Utah's offense, Tyler Huntley and company there, Zach Moss, like, that is a sturdy group. But we know the bread and butter has been defense clobbering people against an Oregon offense that is stout up front, is going to meet them strength on strength. And if they were to win the Pac-12 championship, would cancel like that. Like, you could automatically.
If Oregon wins it?
Yeah,
it's over.
So you could erase them, and then all of a sudden, the Alabama or Oklahoma argument becomes very strange depending on how those games look.
I need to take, because he's such a good friend of mine, 15 seconds to congratulate Herm Edwards on that win. Over at ASU, everybody kind of poo-pooed that hiring. He's too old. He's been out of it too long. What he's doing there with a true freshman quarterback, true freshman left tackle, true freshman right guard, young team. I mean, lost 4 in a row and got their kids to play that way, man. Good on him. Good for him. And he's got that program going in the right direction. Okay.
And the second straight year, by the way, that Herm and Arizona State get some big wins people didn't expect. And to the point you're making, Mike, it's something that we've talked a little bit about on Golic and Wingo, which you can watch on ESPN, and you can listen to on ESPN Radio every Monday through Friday from 6 to 10 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah, you can.
One thing that I've said a bunch over the last couple of weeks, especially in the NFL, is at some point you got to look at the talent around and say, hey, are the coaches making this talent better? And something that Herm has been doing without question at Arizona State is making that team better. They're not an easy out. It doesn't matter what they're doing and how they're playing. And it's just such an inexcusable, is the word I've used a lot today, but it's an inexcusable loss for an Oregon team that had everything laid out in front of them. I think that's got to be the frustrating thing for the Pac-12, because Pac-12 fans are constantly like, respect West Coast football. My God, this committee is trying to, and then you go out and lay that out.
And then on the personal note for Herbert, what did he cost himself there as far as the next level?
Every time I turn them on, I feel like I'm trying to talk myself into Justin Herbert. And we had Todd McShay on with us earlier, and Todd and Mel do a great job covering the draft. And we heard Mike Tannenbaum on with us saying that Justin Herbert would be the first quarterback on his board because he's big and he has all the measurables. Every time I watch Oregon, I'm like, all right, that's kind of a good thing. You feel like you're reaching for it every single time, instead of, a Joe Burrow who rips your eyes out of your head and says, holy hell, this is great.
Yeah.
Let me take a second here and walk you through the rest of the top 25 if we can. You see the top 15 right there. You've got Auburn, Oregon, Michigan, Wisconsin, Florida. That's your 15 through 11. Not a lot of surprises there. A little bit of a reiteration of who the Big Ten is and sort of where they value the Big Ten with Wisconsin and Michigan. I'll again try and throw a little audible to the guys there. Yep, we got it. Thanks. Good work by them back in Bristol. At 16, Notre Dame. Woo! Woo! That's where they've been throughout this whole process.
They've really been stuck right there. It's going to be
consistent. They're consistent.
Iowa at 17, though, that's one to keep an eye on, because that is the Minnesota loss. Memphis, Cincinnati, and Boise State in consecutive spots. Significant because the highest of the group of 5 is going to get a New Year's Six bowl bid. Right now, that will belong to Memphis.
Yeah, that AAC championship game.
Yeah, that's it. Those two are that's going to do it.
Well, and kudos to Memphis for what they built there. And next up, Oklahoma State at 21. Again, you can't sleep on Oklahoma State, the rivalry, and what that means. 22, USC. Better year than people think for Clay Helton and what he's done.
Kedon Slovis, a true freshman.
And they keep trying to dump Clay out of there. Clay Helton.
I mean, how many times did we hear in what might be his last game at the Coliseum, he coaches Kedon Slovis to a record-setting, 5-touchdown performance of him just continuing to slaughter people?
Yet again, it feels like Clay Helton stumbled into having a great quarterback on the roster and just didn't realize it early enough in the season, Sam Darnold. At number 24, Virginia Tech. That's a significant one. I know at number 24 it doesn't feel significant, but it is, because right now there's the chance that Clemson will go the whole year and not play a single ranked opponent. Virginia Tech at 24, if Virginia Tech makes the ACC championship game, would at least it would get that monkey off of everybody's back in that conversation. By the way, you see the Thanksgiving food we are eating. And you thought we were just eating Cheez-Its, which...
Does someone have a knife over there? Because these hunks of turkey are pretty big.
I got a knife here.
Oh, well.
We're prepared.
I'm just using my fingers.
That's sort of concerning.
Can we also acknowledge while Matt and Caroline are in there in the kitchen getting work done? Thank you very much.
Oh,
That's a man right there, just polite. By the way, the macaroni and cheese includes a Cheez-It crumble topping, which is a delight.
Fancy.
I'm just saying, like, it is fancy.
It
Mac.
is so fancy.
I'm in for the fancy.
Yes,
Mac.
there's also like more than one cheese in there. I think there's like cheddar and Gruyere cheese. It's like, it's not just Cheez-Its and cheese. It's like all the.
Well, it's also multiple flavor. We have white.
White cheddar cheese.
We have white cheddar cheeses, and we have pepper jack.
Are you going to spit your food right into the big
so
bag?
You know what?
Also,
I cover my mouth.
Can we also acknowledge that the Cheez-It trophy, which we usually eat out of, has now been turned into a prop that rotates, to be honest. Every week when I come into your house, something has changed with Cheez-It, and now it's at, plus there's these fancy ranking reactions Cheez-It signs, which you and I are going to fight for afterwards. There's going to be like full Jello wrestling.
Oh, yeah. Listen, that'll be the last episode of Rankings Reactions, you and I sumo wrestling, you inevitably passing during that, and us mourning you as I lord over you and take the signs.
Side note, do we wear the diapers when we sumo wrestle, or is that not a requirement?
That is not a requirement.
What?
It is a requirement.
That's a requirement.
Okay, all right. The rules have changed.
Plus, you'll need them because when he hits you, you're going to poop yourself.
Right. Well, that's probably fair. I just think it's important that we get clarity before because I feel like I would show up to this party in a diaper. You wouldn't wear a diaper, and then it would get really weird.
I've been to a diaper party before. It's a strange deal.
Yeah, he has.
A diaper party?
Yeah.
Okay.
What is okay?
Yeah.
I mean, listen, don't ask questions you guys don't want the answer to.
But I'm just, is it like as an adult or is it like a child?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, as an adult.
This man sitting next to me once on radio said, you know, most of us stopped wearing diapers and anything when we were in our mid-20s. That's an actual thing he said.
I was a baby my senior year at Notre Dame on Halloween. Me and our starting center on the team that ended up playing the national championship, we were babies, and so we wore Depends diapers to CJ's Pub in South Bend.
Okay, because I was going to ask what size diaper you have to get, but I guess there are adult diapers.
I think I can say it's listed on the Depends bag as dumb thick, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was just going to be big boy with like 3 Ys. Like, big boy.
Big boy.
That was really cute. Diapers and tattoos went well.
That's remarkable.
It was a look.
It's Rankings Reaction. Again, Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr. We are
Mike
you and I
Golic
are
other.
the turkey sandwich.
The other Mike
Christine
Golic.
and other Mike Golic.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've always wanted to be an honorary Golic. Christine Williamson, I'm Jason Fitz. Caroline hanging out. Matt Ufford's hanging out. We're all just like, there's a whole group of us getting our Thanksgiving grub on. Let's take a look at the college football eliminator. We like to do this every single week.
Yeah, we got a robot.
We're going to give you a robot that's like, this is fun animation. You know, we'd like to, before we take it any further,
It's
we'll
fun
check
until
in.
the robot starts to try and kill me.
It's the CFP Eliminator 5000. Last week, it eliminated Baylor from the playoff picture. Let's see if it has anybody in mind after this past weekend. I'll
It
check
tries to look cute.
Oh, he's so cute.
Nah, I didn't say anything cute. It's got fire for eyes.
Oh, we know who it has.
Did you guys see?
Look, who's he eliminating?
Did you guys?
Recycling though. Very. Oh yeah. Yep.
Well, am I right?
You're right. You're right.
Thank you.
Baylor out of there.
Am I the
very
smartest person?
predictable.
The
It's
smallest
very
man on this couch? I mean,
My question is, did we spend the whole budget on that animation of a robot? Because that was
What are you
pretty
talking
dope.
about? The Cheez-It trophy twirls around. We spent it on other stuff, man. We're balling out
I mean,
here.
I don't know. I think the robot was pretty amazing. Penn State, Oregon joining Baylor on the sideline. Any argument that Penn State, Oregon now officially eliminated from the college football playoff conversation?
Absolutely done. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're out
They're
of
out.
5,000.
Oregon should have been there in the first place.
Wow.
Wow, you are just really down on them, aren't
They
you?
did it wrong. It was wrong.
She hates the committee. By the way, I want to be on the committee. I hope you don't hate me
Okay, I
someday.
won't hate you because I'm
I
sure.
won't.
Oh yeah, Dad, is this your
you'll do
official?
job.
Is this your
Yes.
official platform to try and launch your
What?
campaign to get on the committee?
I need to be on. I am a film junkie. I will study this. I will be one of the best on that
I
committee.
trust your judgment.
I never have to leave the room because I'm not associated with any team. Even though I went to
That's
Notre
true.
Dame, it doesn't mean I'm not part of Notre
I
Dame.
wondered that. Well, I mean, you were a captain on the football team and played there.
I went to school there and played football there.
But I guess-
listen,
I mean,
But
I'm
that's
just
only
saying-
one team. You wouldn't have to recuse yourself for a whole conference.
But I'm saying, like, you
That's
had an
true.
affiliation the same way if you were an AD of a school, I'd imagine you'd have to
would I
recuse
have to leave?
yourself.
I'll leave,
Yes.
and that's
Possibly,
fine.
but that's
Because I
fine.
hear the catering in there is really good, so I do want to be.
Good
I
bacon.
do
Heather
think.
Dinich told us
I
that.
do think I could do well on that committee. I want to be on the committee, and I'll enjoy the bacon.
And
Yeah.
really, if you're just recusing yourself for the Notre Dame playoff
Don't say it.
Don't
Just
do it.
don't. Don't
Don't
do
do
it.
it.
Just don't.
Fitz, I get the Raiders lost this weekend.
Just
you need to
don't
calm
do it.
down.
All right.
Salty.
You
He's salty.
wouldn't have to. You wouldn't
Just
have
zip it.
to. You wouldn't have to.
I will color on you. I will color on you. Be careful, little boy.
All right, so it is time for. You wouldn't have to leave the conversation very often. Anyway, it is time for commandments. We do every single week. We get you through the 10 commandments. We have this little tablet here, and we go through and we add some commandments to it. We are 6 in Roman numerals. There we go. It is time to add rule number 7. So, Mike, are you ready to give us the shout? There's a
by the
weekly
way-
argument about shout or shall. I just
Yeah,
realized-
what do you think it is? Is it shall or shall? Like the command.
Shout.
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 Mike
Forget what we
Foss
said about-
definitively says it's shall not. I think he's wrong.
He's the heathen. So
let him come near me and I'll pop him and then we'll see.
Okay, wow.
Shout is
thou
archaic.
shalt not,
Thou shalt not hit Foss.
2019.
or cop to acts of
That's what it
violence on the air right now where HR can hear you.
Okay.
I love that we've been arguing about
is this on air right now?
for
I
weeks.
thought we were just shooting the
we
breeze.
thought we were just
We've
like
been
on the
arguing
couch.
about shout or shout for weeks.
I go
Christine
shout.
just Googled
Just Google it.
And
We-
she's like,
by
oh,
the
good
way-
answer.
Right?
What is the answer?
It's shout. Shout is archaic. Shall is.
I have been
like
called
it's
archaic
2019.
though.
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
You got like the
That's-
Moses
okay.
stripes in
Well,
gray right there.
People
I
wonder.
won't call you
People wonder if I had
archaic.
leather helmets when I played, so I go shout.
So the problem we also ran into is we did the classic thing everyone does when they make a sign, which is you start
Yeah.
writing the letters real
Oh,
big.
you got no
and then
room.
realize you run out of space. We are 8 deep and we
Yeah,
are
we're
fully
8
out
deep.
of space. That being said,
we got a side for each one. We'll do 9 and 10 on
I mean,
each
we
side.
have a back too, but all right. I got the one for this. I got number 7. I can't read Roman numerals either. The Super Bowl needs to stop doing that. Anyway, thou shalt. I'm gonna make sure I get the verbiage right here. Have strength of resume.
Ooh.
Are you sure?
I am positive. One of the things that's been consistent with the committee, so strength of resume is strength of schedules, like superior older sibling. Beat it, Jake and Sydney. It's the superior older sibling. It's the metric the committee values, and so it looks at what the average college football team's likelihood of accomplishing what you have against your schedule would be. And usually it's one of the more predictive metrics as the season goes along. The Final Four in almost all of the rankings, I believe all but 2 teams that have been involved in the college football playoff, that being 2018 Oklahoma and 2014 Ohio State, were ranked inside the top 4 in strength of resume when things were all said and done. And this one currently, right now, when we look at strength of resume rankings, Ohio State is number 2, LSU is number 1, Clemson is number 4, and Georgia is number 3. So the top 4 in strength of resume are the top 4 in the college football playoff committee's rankings right now.
That is really smart, well
I
done
love
content.
that.
Every once in a while, man, I run into a
will.
situation.
I got
But
really
I guess I
confused
can't.
on that.
All right, mine is much easier, and this is not going to be a popular opinion based on today's rankings, but thou shalt not be in the big.
I knew.
Oh,
where
no.
it was
Well,
going.
Oh,
I mean,
wow.
This is simple. There's only one.
yeah.
There's only one Power 5 conference that's never won a playoff game, and that would be the Big 12.
Okay, but
and
you're
why
talking-
is it we always talk about, like, we'll go back to the Notre Dame conversation. We say that the committee will remember that Notre
true.
Dame got their butts kicked, and that's going to be a reason of hesitation. Well, what have we seen this year? This year we have seen the committee devalue the Big 12. They're human. At some point, do they not look at it and say, well, there's one conference that never wins a playoff game? That would be the Big 12.
But Oklahoma's been in the games that they've played in that. Now last year they got down big, but the game against Georgia the year before was a barn burner.
I agree. I don't know how much I'm buying into that, Jason. I'm sorry.
They're over.
I don't know how much I'm shouts
haven't
buying
won
into
And you know
that.
what?
Game in the
It
college
is
football
interesting, though, because Oregon in year 1 really held it down for everyone. That Marcus Mariota Oregon team that got in the playoff and made some hay there certainly is keeping afloat. What is a conference that had since then? What is it? Is it UW the only other Pac-12 team that's made it? And they lost, I think, a respectable loss to Alabama when they got in the tournament.
Well, Mike, would it change your opinion if I offered you a Cheez-It?
Sure. Yeah.
They're white cheddar. Aren't these your fave?
Well, I
I get my
love
Yeah,
figured
these
this
are
out
the
a
best
long
ones.
time ago. It's all about the
Should've
Cheez-Its.
done
Okay, we've added commandments, although Mike doesn't agree with Mike, and we'll see where it goes because let's be honest. I think we're real that the opportunity got better for the Big 12 this week.
Oh, I think it absolutely
I mean,
did.
I
without
think
question.
the Big Ten came out and really they're the big winners of this week's playoff. Again, your top 6, if you're just tuning in: Utah 6, Alabama 5, Georgia 4, Clemson 3, LSU 2, Ohio State 1. They're working diligent to fix my communication. I have a massive feedback issue now, so don't worry about it, guys. We'll fly by.
His brain's
we'll fly
gonna
by.
explode
This is what
soon.
makes these digital shows awesome. They are live, and you never know what's going to happen. Penn State at 10, Baylor 9, Minnesota 8, Oklahoma at 7. So I don't think there's a lot of eruption here, mostly because this continues, as I said earlier, guys. This is, I would say, a committee that's a just cause committee, but it's also been a very safe committee in many ways. The Ohio State LSU conversation is going to work itself out over the next couple of weeks. We're going to know who should be number 1.
I think there's a couple things here. First and foremost, as Greg McElroy sits down, I was told there'd be no quarterbacks. All right? As a former D lineman, this is very difficult for me because I never got to players like you. A couple of things. LSU now being number 2.
Yeah.
I think they go back to number 1 if they beat Georgia, and the key being there, 2 is going to play Clemson.
Yeah.
Because Clemson's going to stay at 3, so I think it'll be Ohio State if everybody wins out the way it's going. And the other thing is, I really think the committee put now the Big 12 back in a good position because Baylor is sitting in the top 10, so if Oklahoma takes care of them, they're going to be a great situation because Oregon dropped all the way to 14.
Yeah.
So it won't be as good a win for Utah.
So Greg McElroy, who joins us, just came from the rankings reaction show on TV and is now doubling
happy
up
to get his jacket and tie off, right?
It's great to see you guys. I was able to figure out which house it was, but I noticed the blocking sled out front.
Yeah, listen, we still like to get work in.
Oh, fair enough. Fitz going through the gauntlet. It was good. It was really pretty obvious. It was subtle.
Hey, listen,
it was gold and blue too. It was strange.
It's the darndest thing, I showed up and the house was like that when I bought it. It was amazing. The previous owners just had great taste. So
that's fair.
You can't account for taste and all that. Greg, I have to say right now, I saw you on the ranking show and certainly want to hear what some of your initial rankings were to it. But my initial reaction to you physically right now is, wow, bearded Greg McElroy is doing it for me.
Watching you every morning.
It's just incredible, man.
I shaved 3 days ago, so it's coming through real clean.
Paul Bunyan, if you were a ginger.
Just stop it.
It's rough. It's a struggle. I'm not gonna lie.
I'm going to get you in on our debate that we were having earlier today. We're going to play the what-if game, which is dangerous because college football blows up every week in our face.
Yes.
If Minnesota wins out, all the way,
yes,
and Georgia wins out at the same time,
correct.
Okay, so what do you have now? You have Georgia as the SEC champion.
Georgia's in
with a win over LSU.
Right.
So then you have LSU, Clemson, Minnesota, Ohio State. Who's out?
Well, right now we have Ohio State sitting ahead of LSU. So when they go back to the drawing board, you got to think Georgia's in, right? Clemson's in for sure. Clemson might be the number 1 overall seed in those circumstances.
In that scenario, they would be.
Right. So Clemson would find their way to 1. I would say Georgia likely to be 2, Minnesota probably 3, and then in the 4 spot, all right, we're having the same conversation 2 weeks from now that we're having tonight. Which one do you like? Do you like LSU or do you like Ohio State? Because frankly, I think LSU's resume is more impressive, but if they played right now on a neutral field, I'm leaning towards the Buckeyes just because of how Chase Young impacts opposing quarterbacks. I don't think LSU has that guy. So it's a fascinating conversation. I love the hypotheticals.
I am going to throw a wrinkle in there and say that considering this committee already told us only 2 weeks after watching Minnesota beat Penn State that Penn State was still better because of some other metric they made up.
Common opponent,
They don't care about that.
I'm throwing shade at the committee from the couch. But my argument would be Georgia, of all those one-loss teams, would have by far the worst of the losses.
Correct.
So why wouldn't Georgia then be the team that's on the outside looking in, even if they won a conference championship? A conference championship is only a tiebreaker in these scenarios. And is it really worth valuing over everything else we've seen from LSU, who's looked better throughout the course of the year, and Ohio State? I mean, you're talking about a bunch of value. So I would make the argument that even if Georgia won the SEC in that scenario, they're still out.
I think that's fair. What I would say and what I would caution everybody to say, because I think fans struggle with this a little bit. Well, they have a worse loss. We saw Clemson, the number 1 overall seed 2 years ago, and they lost to 4-8 Syracuse. That was an awful loss. It was an atrocious loss, and yet they were still the number 1 overall seed. So I think the committee is willing to forgive really ugly losses. That being said, are they willing to give a team a second chance upon essentially devaluing the conference championship? Because that's my thing. We talk about this all the time. The expansion, right? Expansion to 8. It's inevitable. It's coming.
Yeah, right.
Well, we can expand it right now. And all we have to do is say that conference championship game, what you did in the regular season got you there. Hey, the playoffs start today in the early December. And if you lose, you're out. If you win, you're in. And they could say that to both Ohio State and LSU, and that would probably hurt their feelings, and understandably so, considering how great they were through 12 games. But if they wanted to say, hey, this is essentially an expanded playoff, this would be the year to maybe do it.
So in a more chalk scenario, LSU wins, Ohio State wins, Clemson wins out. Who has the inside track for the 4 slot? Alabama, Utah, Oklahoma.
I think it has to, let's not forget Baylor, too. Because I think that was the the common thing. I know but if you look at the metrics and you look at strength of schedule and all these other things, they might be in a similar situation to last year's Oklahoma, where Oklahoma avenged their loss
Yeah.
against Texas in the Big 12 championship, thus giving them the inside track against a one-loss Ohio State. So I could see that scenario too unfolding. Now, that being said, I don't think they're getting in. So I guess,
ain't gonna be.
Right, yeah. In that scenario, I think Utah is best positioned to potentially get into that 4th spot because I think Alabama, if they beat Auburn, their best wins against an 8-4 team.
Right.
And can you unequivocally say that without Tua Tagovailoa, they are one of the top 4 teams? I think a lot of people might have a difficult time saying that.
But hold on, Nick Saban just said this Auburn team's the best team he's going to play all year.
Oh, yeah.
Greg, people had to appreciate the beauty of that.
It looked like someone was steering. There was a robot steering Nick Saban throughout that press conference, wasn't it? I mean,
It was great stuff.
So without factoring who should be where, does anybody have any problem with 1 through 4 today?
no.
No.
No. Okay, so let me ask then, not the what ifs or the what coulds. In your mind, who's the 5th best team in college football today?
Right now,
Today.
I would take Alabama.
I would too.
Yeah, pretty comfortable with that.
Oh, Christine did not.
Down.
Christine is
Not
I
feeling
bet said Oklahoma.
I love it.
Go on.
I was just gonna say, without Tua, I don't know if I can say that. I can say that with Tua, but without Tua, I mean, obviously, yes, Mac Jones is doing a great job, but like, can we really say that Alabama is number 5 in the country with
but
Mac
Jones with wins over Arkansas and Western
Yeah.
Carolina.
See, but I think her reaction is a smart one. We're the dumb ones over here. Like, I've seen Bama. They're good.
Yeah,
Like,
they're great.
Quite
He's
honestly,
reasonable.
This is
Even
what I was.
forgetting the quarterback, I'm more worried about Alabama's defense.
Yeah, I'm with
Well,
you.
I mean,
That's very
Oklahoma
true.
has the
That's very
same
true.
fears in that. It's
Yeah,
not like it's
true.
ill-founded.
And
there.
Utah has the defense this year.
So,
Yeah.
Utah's,
That's true.
correct me if I'm
Utah's
wrong, the only
unreal.
team in top 10 with top 10
Offensive
offense and defensive efficiency.
Yeah.
But to the room, if you had, this is what we always say in Golic and Wingo, right? Christine, if I had to ask you to bet an uncomfortable amount of money,
See, that's
neutral
the
field,
thing. No.
Utah versus Alabama, who are you taking today?
Okay, well, hold on. That's a tough one.
See, this is
I
that's
think-
my follow-up question to everybody, because I think you're right. Like, this is such a heated debate for college football fans. But if you had to bet your house, like it was like, oh, you know
Neutral
what?
sites, all neutral sites.
All neutral site.
Well, part of that is if you ask college football fans, like most haven't paid attention to Utah and what they've done this year, which is actually like Utah was in the Pac-12 championship last year, but they were in it without their entire backfield.
Right.
Yeah. Tyler Huntley and Zach Moss both injured down the stretch, played in a slog of a Pac-12 championship game. This year, both of those guys are healthy. Both of those guys are playing exceptionally well. We know the defense came into the year getting the accolades that it deserved, but offensively, this team is probably not one that people in general thought of in a while, whereas we've seen Jerry Jeudy and Ruggs and all those ballers they've got at wide receiver at Alabama.
I think the one thing, though, too, like Alabama is good enough in regards to their personnel to have earned the right to prove us wrong.
Yep.
So right now, I think at this point, they have great personnel, and they don't have the conference championship right now that other people might have here in a couple weeks. So I guess at this point of the season, then all you have right now is resume and eye test, and everyone's resume is somewhat comparable.
Yes.
But I test Alabama based on personnel. You can
normally
make
win.
a clear argument that they're in the mix. So they earned the right that Ohio State earned the right a few years back. They earned the right because even though it's not the starting quarterback that we saw throughout the regular season, we don't know what Cardale Jones is capable of. So let's keep Alabama at 5.
But
and
wait, let me push back on that. That was an Ohio State team that was incredibly talented. They didn't have the same question marks to Golic Senior's points earlier. This Alabama defense has real question marks compared to what we've seen in the past. This isn't an Alabama team that is so clearly better than everybody else.
I mean, they may have the most talented wide receiver core we've seen in a long time in college football. I understand LSU might have something to say about that with two guys alone, but I'm saying the depth of that room alone is something freakish. And I think, Greg, what you brought up is important because it is right now. And we've seen, based off flipping 1 and 2 this week, how reactive this is week to week. Going into it, the challenge that Alabama's in now is Cardale Jones and that Ohio State team had a third game. Like they had that Big Ten championship. And now that gets into, to me, conference championships are another game unless you're playing a quality opponent. Alabama loses out on the opportunity to have that 13th data point during the season, and they lose out on the chance to potentially beat a quality opponent in that. And so they're open that weekend. And we also know that conference championship weekend is the only weekend the committee's all watching games together. So you're reacting to all that in real time. in front of each other, and Alabama's sitting on the sideline not playing, and that's a difficult spot when your backup quarterback's in and when you have you don't have a lot of quality wins on your resume outside of what could be Auburn.
If we're going to look into a crystal ball, I'd be shocked if Bama got in.
Yeah.
I would be really shocked if they got in.
agree.
However, I am perfectly okay with them being 5. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So maybe I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth.
I don't think so. It makes sense.
Let them be 5 and let's see what the other teams
Completely.
do. If they can make us go, oh, okay, you know what?
Yeah.
They should be in over Alabama.
Absolutely.
I have no problem with that either.
By the way, just because I think we have a fancy animation and I'm trying to get to it because it looks cool, this would be Alabama-Auburn would be our panic button matchup.
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah, oh, but now, no, we're going to crunch time.
Nope.
That's what we're doing.
Oh, boy. There you go.
So,
Deal with it, Jason.
it's time to review the weekend of college football. These are your crunch time moments. First up, Nebraska taking on Maryland. Adrian Martinez going for the end zone. Ball gets tipped, eventually caught by J.D. Spielman. Martinez can't believe it. The ball exchanged hands a couple of times before it landed for a 25-yard touchdown. Let's take another look here. 2 defenders, by the way.
How's Maryland
tipped the ball
doing?
here.
Maryland doing pretty good?
Remember early in the year when
Not
Maryland
great,
was
Bob.
I got hot potato in Thanksgiving. Like that's a twice baked potato.
Mike Loxley, things are going well in Maryland again.
Yeah, let's move on to Michigan here. Michigan versus Indiana. Shea Patterson throws it to Donovan Peoples-Jones, who lays it out, makes a nice catch. A couple more looks here, guys. Look at the extension right on the money. Remember, Indiana was supposed to be really good and suddenly going to be able to give them a challenge.
9 Indiana.
Yeah.
And last up on this one, let's go to Auburn. Final play here, guys. Auburn and Samford. Tigers up 7-0 early. Their defense makes a nice play. Jeremiah Dinson tracks this one down along the sideline. Yep, that's a pick.
Give me the look.
Take another look. He does a little, does it just right? Look, a little tap dancing. He's like,
He
Ginger
got a little
Rogers.
assist from his teammate there.
Oh, well, I mean, however
He got
you
hit
did it.
back into bounds by his teammate.
I'd be able to see better if that cup wasn't blocking the
Well, you know what? The cup has a Cheez-It label on it. So
The cup has coffee.
It's not going anywhere.
The cup has coffee in it, which doesn't go great with this turkey.
Oh, I bet it doesn't.
That is your crunch time. Those are your crunch time moments presented by Cheez-It. Some good moments from there as we go through the moments of the weekend. And obviously, if you're just tuning in, rankings reaction, Mike Golic Jr., I'm Jason Fitz. Greg McElroy joining us, quarterback in this whole thing. Mike Golic Sr., Christine Williamson over there. We're just trying to break down everything that the committee saw and everything that the committee told us.
Can I ask Greg something? Because we are going into what you had there is our panic button game of the weekend, the one that's going to decide a lot. We think going forward is the Iron Bowl. So Greg, a little peek inside the window there. First off, just in general, you played in the Iron Bowl during your time at Alabama, one of the better rivalries in college football. Yeah. But what you expect out of this matchup also, an unbelievable Auburn defense against an Alabama offense that we know we have a serious question mark about.
You know, I think, first of all, the intangible aspects of this game are ridiculous. You know what I mean? That's the one thing that you can't really prepare for. So we can talk about Mac Jones, how talented he is, how great he is. I don't know how the heck he's going to play against Auburn because Auburn's a different team in this game. They are. They have nothing to lose, and I played in a similar setting to that in 2009. They had nothing to lose, and we had national championship on the line, playoff berth, or BCS championship on the mind at that point, and they gave us hell, and it was brutal. So I can envision Auburn having a real similar recipe this weekend. The big thing is we're talking about the quarterbacks, Bo Nix for Auburn, Mac Jones for Alabama. This is a line of scrimmage game. I know you love that. You want to break it down? 3 techniques and 4 eyes.
I'm so happy. You know what? I thought you mentioned both quarterbacks. I thought, oh, God, here we go. Instead of talking about Derek Brown and that 3 technique just smoking people like he's going to. I appreciate that very much.
The other thing, too, is Alabama's a little banged up in the trenches.
Yep.
Like, along the defensive line, they're not 100%. And if there's one thing Auburn does have going for them is that they're healthy along the offensive line and they're veteran along the offensive line. They played in this game before. Won't be an issue for them whatsoever to play well. And you know, Gus Malzahn, the head coach at Auburn, he's gonna try to run the ball. And that's his best recipe. And if Alabama's not at 100%, they're missing some key pieces, which they might be. That might have a bit of an effect on their ability to stop that run.
All right, I'm going to switch us over. So we're going to have a little fun at this point. This is what we do. You guys are new to the show. This is what we do every week.
You do this show every week?
No, it's first time.
We do the way more important rankings every week.
They
said
they
more important
pay me
rankings.
and I got Cheez-Its.
We're going to review. Here, check it out. Every week, this has nothing to do with college football. Our way more important rankings. We are ranking Thanksgiving sides. First up, we had nothing to do with this.
Wow.
But they give us the rankings. At number 6.
No, that's awful. Get it out.
Cranberry sauce, which is just hot
Go
garbage.
to hell.
At number 5, gravy. Gravy's a condiment. Should be much higher, though. Number 4, rolls. Who made this?
Underappreciated.
Rolls. Number 3, mashed potatoes.
The ultimate teammate.
Okay.
Number 2, mac and cheese.
Standard.
So what's number 1? It's got to be stuffing, right? It's got to be stuffing. Yeah, stuffing.
What is stuffing?
Stuffing or dressing?
It's stuffing.
I call it stuffing.
I grew up
Is
in
it
the
dressing?
North.
It's dressing to me.
Dressing in, yeah.
It's
Where
stuffing.
are you from? Where are you from originally?
California.
Oh, remix.
Now, hold on
Is
now.
it dressing in California?
Are rolls
yeah.
a side
I
dish?
think so.
Rolls, I don't think are a side dish. I
Cranberry
think they're
sauce
just
isn't a side dish, and neither is gravy.
yeah.
Cranberry sauce is
Those are
cheese,
condiments.
is what it is.
Wait,
Cranberry
what?
sauce should be in the trash.
Awful.
Or it can go on top of turkey.
Sure. Like if
what?
you want gravy.
Wait.
Or if you want to ruin my
That's
dinner.
Hang on a
what it's
second.
for. Have you never had turkey with cranberry sauce?
No.
Wait.
No.
I like how
I'm out.
Christine,
I'm
Christine
out.
just pulled in the that's what it's for. Like this is the definitive
That's
no
literally
thing.
what it is.
There's one reason for cranberry. The rest of
Only
the room
reason
is lost.
it's here is to go on the turkey.
I'm out on cranberry sauce.
Gravy, by the way, which I'm a gravy fanatic, but I will tell
Absolutely.
you, gravy is a condiment. It's not a side.
It's not a side.
you know,
Condiment.
Yeah, like gravy's sort of like ketchup on a hamburger.
You're not
like,
putting gravy in a bowl and eating it with a spoon.
Right,
I think
so it's
gravy
not a
and
side.
rolls don't belong.
I don't know. Hey, I'm about to say. Wait,
You're like,
have you
yes,
never
I
done
am.
that?
This house, we don't know the Golics. I mean, the Golics
You know,
are-
I haven't been here this year. I don't want to take over the show or anything. I like that list there, but dessert. Is it pumpkin pie? Are we top something?
I think
Jason.
there might be
yeah.
another list.
Hang on.
I think there's
Another one.
I think there's
Oh,
another list here. Maybe because I see that there's a top 6
Oh!
pies.
Wow.
Number 6.
Wait a minute.
That's a 6 spot?
Pumpkin. At
no.
number 4. At number 4,
Oh, I
key
do
lime.
like key lime.
Key lime.
I do like
key
key
lime.
lime.
Oh yeah. At number 3, apple.
Apple.
A little overrated.
At
Honestly.
number 2, chocolate.
Oh,
now you're
okay,
talking.
okay.
Now you're
At
talking.
number 1.
Okay.
Cheesecake's not pie.
Cheesecake's not pie.
Cake's not
Cheesecake's
It's cake.
cake.
That's why it's called cake.
It's not called cheese
All right,
pie.
hear me out. It
There
mimics
is something
pie
called
in
cheese
many
pie, too.
ways.
It does mimic pie, but I think I have to agree for this conversation, cheesecake is not pie.
The most important thing is that because cheesecake is a delight, pie is trash. So cheesecake
just
doesn't
shut
count. Pie is
Mike, hit
It's a
him.
reminder, cake is better than every pie. Happy
Cake
birthday,
is.
Mom. I'm happy.
Hey, happy birthday, hon.
happy birthday.
I'll be home soon. Yeah.
No, I'm a little disappointed. Pumpkin at 6?
Pumpkin at 6.
That's
No, that's
Where's
six.
sweet
No.
potato?
seriously. Sweet
Sweet
potato.
potato pie did not
Sweet
make it
potato
as a
pie.
side or as a pie.
And that is definitely a Thanksgiving special. Nobody's
Yeah.
eating sweet potato pie outside of Thanksgiving.
There's also a raging debate: is pumpkin or sweet
Pumpkin
potato
versus
pie?
sweet potato.
Also,
Yeah, it's
how
a
is
thing.
there
It's
not
a thing.
one casserole on the sides? Not one.
Green bean casserole.
Green bean casserole.
Sweet potato casserole.
Sweet potato, anything, any casserole.
You
Sweet
know what?
potato
It feels
really
like
took a
this
back
list.
seat there.
It feels
Yeah,
like
that's
both
true.
of these lists, not to really like break down, the differences, but it feels like both of these lists were made by a bunch of people from the north. Like really.
Whoa, all right, listen.
okay.
All
right.
At least say a bunch of skinny people from the north. Like
I'm
we
just saying,
of
no.
the northern fats rebuke this.
There is no casserole and there's no sweet potato pie. That tells you that there was
There's a
not a
problem.
single
It's a problem.
southerner
Yeah, you can-
involved in the entire.
That's
I
reasonable.
agree, sweet potato. I'm not a fan of it, but
Yeah.
I will acquiesce to those who, because I know it's very, very popular. And a casserole not being there is
That's weird.
Gravy and rolls should not be there. Casserole
And
should be
cranberry
there.
sauce.
Well, that was 6.
But what is it? It's a condiment.
No, it's
trash.
You don't
It's out.
eat it with a spoon
It's out.
either.
Yeah.
Or a fork or
Yeah,
anything.
yeah.
I'm sorry, apple pie being at number 3. I'm with you, Greg. I think apple's a severely overrated
See,
pie.
I disagree.
You can have it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
What
out.
was
all
missing
pie.
there on all those pies was whipped cream and or ice
Yeah,
cream.
ice cream.
Now,
That's
Like a
will-
vat of
Just
it.
an a la mode.
So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I always go, my caveat with pie, as you guys well know, if you listen to Golic and Wingo, is that pie crust is hot garbage. Now,
You're hot garbage.
graham cracker
Yeah,
crust.
Fitz, you also have the worst food takes that mankind has ever
Graham
offered.
cracker crust is a delight.
It is.
Graham cracker
Yes.
crust is a delight. But cheesecake, that's like cheesecake I love. And actually, frankly, I really like key lime pie
I
because
love
it's
key
on
lime
the graham
pie.
cracker
Yeah,
crust.
yeah.
It's just not aptly named. It shouldn't, but pie crust.
Key lime pie is pretty
And then
solid.
everybody turns
Yeah,
around, they're
I
like, oh,
agree.
but you haven't had my, and then insert like, you haven't had my grandma's pie. I like it.
Right,
My aunt's
right.
pie's better. Like, no, I've had all of these, and they're all
I
trash.
think all pie is trash.
All pie.
Well, I guess
Savory
I can't
pie,
because I
sweet
think
pie.
you're trash.
I'm judging you.
Wow.
As you should. As you should.
Are we, like, your mom's not here and we're cutting into the cake anyway. This has been Rankings Reaction. First and foremost, we want to say happy Thanksgiving. Have a wonderful, safe, incredible holiday. We are here every single Tuesday to give you the reaction to everything that the committee says. Mike Golic Sr., Greg McElroy, you guys, I hope we were decent
see you,
hosts.
pal.
It's good
Thanks
to
for
see you
coming
guys.
by, Greg.
Good to be here.
Mike, you don't
food
need this
left,
cake,
Mike?
so I'll just take it off your hands. Christine,
food.
thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful holiday. Enjoy your families. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll be back again next Tuesday. Come right back here at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Thanks, Jesus.
See ya.
Is there a cheesy?